Well, I guess it boils down to taking a bet, right? If you're going to take a bet on anyone, you might as well take a bet on yourself. And at the time, you don't know that. You don't think you don't give yourself the permission to think that you know what you need to do in order to go pull the trigger, right? And that's what analysis paralysis is. It's just this constant circle of self-gratification, going to these seminars, going to seminars. Okay, where are you going to go put action in?
Welcome to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast, your guide in the race to financial freedom through real estate investing and sound financial practices. This podcast is for anyone interested in learning more about real estate investing, personal finances, and a new take on traditional retirement. Now, here are your hosts, Larry Fierro and Mike Moe.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast, your guide on the race to financial freedom through real estate investing and sound financial practices. My name is Mike Moe, one of the hosts of the show, coming to you on a Friday. Mr. Fierro.
On a Friday.
Launching an episode on a Friday, man.
My man, we had a little bit of an issue. We forgot to go back and redo the intro and outro, and I was editing and went, uh-oh. So
we're missing a couple pieces here.
We are. It's one of those technical difficulties that sometimes happen, but, it's a growing pain of scaling, and we're working on it. So,
we're just keeping people on their toes. And, when an episode didn't come on Thursday, we just wanted to make sure everybody was paying attention, and no worries, everybody who reached out. We are still all well and fine, and here we're coming to you on a Friday morning. Or actually, we're launching this on a Friday morning. We're coming to you whenever you're listening to this. Who knows? So
That's right. Well, you want me to jump into the warm-up and get them ready for the race?
We can't warm up if we don't know where we're going or who we're running with. So let's let Mr. Reed Goossens today on the show, huh?
Excellent episode. Yeah, Reed came over from Australia and just is setting it on fire over here. He's just blowing his business up and doing great.
Yeah, man. So, Reed moved over from Australia, like you said, in 2012. And, since investing, as we talked about, investing in some dicey duplexes in the, Rochester, New York area?
Syracuse. Yes.
Has gone on to grow Wildhorn Capital to some pretty impressive feats. Best-selling author. He's got 2 books available. Investing in the U.S., The Ultimate Guide to U.S. Real Estate, and the 10,000 Miles to the American Dream. So, and then also he hosts his own very successful podcast as well. So definitely doing a lot, Mr. Reed Goossens. So I'm excited to be able to tap into his brain today and share what he knows with our listeners.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Very excited.
All right, man. Now that we know who we're running with and where we're going, let's get the warm-up.
Let's do the warm-up. We're doing a RIA group, because he talked about that. A real estate investment association is a trade organization for real estate investors. RIAs range from small informal groups to more organized and larger groups with hundreds or even thousands of members.
Heck yeah, man. Get involved in your local RIAs. If you don't know what it is, now you know. Some of them are free. Some of them you got to pay. But honestly, if you got to pay your 10 or 15, 20 bucks to get into an event, you never know what you could get out of those events, who you could meet, your next business partner, your next sponsor. It's good to get in those events. And once you get to a few, you'll decide to pick the ones that maybe jive a little bit better with your goals and things like that. But it's definitely good to get to those events. And like Reed said, it's a fantastic area to network and grow your business.
It is. Absolutely. So you want to jump into this? Because I'm excited for the folks to hear his interview.
Yep. Let's do it, man.
All right,
Reed Goossens, welcome to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast, man. How you doing?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show, mate.
I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, super, Larry.
Super excited to have you on, man. I know we got a ton we want to get to today. We really kind of want to dive into kind of the introduction of starting a business and how to scale and really learn from what you went through with the first handful of years in your business. But before we do that, man, I've heard your story before and I think it's fascinating. So can we start there? Like, how did you get into real estate? How did you get into entrepreneurship, and kind of tell us a little bit about your journey?
Sure. Look, trying to keep it as short as possible. If you don't need to repeat it like an old record. Moved to the US in 2012. Moved here for love of my now wife, then girlfriend, but also the love of New York City. And my whole thing for those people listening is, I had moved to this country in order to just really be an expat, and I thought I was just going to live in New York City for a couple of years and move home. And my background's in structural engineering. I thought I was going to get a structural engineering job and give it a couple of years here, be a local, and then move back to Australia. But the curiosity within me has pushed me to do more and want to be more. And that's the real thing that hopefully people today get out of the show, is that I'm all about backing myself and learning early on in my career to just give it a go and have the fear of regret is really strong within me. And so I don't want to wake up when I'm 70 years of age and go, geez, I wish I'd given it a go. So the move to America was in 2012. I'd already picked up the book Rich Dad Poor Dad prior to that. I knew I wanted to be my own boss. I knew I wanted to not be in the cubicles for the next 40 years of my life. And that got me on a path in 2010 and 2011, leading up to moving to the United States, to start learning about real estate, because I was in structural engineering. I was surrounded by developers, and I just realized, okay, I need to use my career to try and propel myself a little bit, or just at least try to learn. And I was self-educating in Australia, and I was going to do something in Oz, but then I said, no, I really want to move back. Really want to live abroad again. That itch inside me, and I had met Erica at the time, and I said, I'm going to move to America. Let's quit my job and move here. And I didn't have a job when I first moved here. I had to pound the pavements to get one, and very quickly realized the benefits of investing here in the United States. And for all those people listening out there, when I first moved here, the incredible infrastructure, or not infrastructure, but the incredible communities that you guys have in and around the RIAs, the Real Estate Investment Associations, that are very prevalent in every single major metro, they don't exist in Australia. Like, so me coming here and you paying $20 at the door to learn some incredible information, I was like, wowee, like this is awesome. And so that was the starting point. I was like fresh off the boat, 2 weeks of being in this country. I was at my first one in New York City, and it was like taking information out of a fire hose. And through that, I realized, okay, wow, I need to change my investing lingo. I need to figure out what the hell a credit score is. I need to figure out what an LLC is, what an EIN number is. And I had to figure out all these things. But it was the more to do with the fact that the access to information was so much readily available. I would have to pay a guru in Australia a lot of money to get just what they were teaching on a Tuesday evening, And so through going to those meetings, I ended up realizing that some of the barriers to entry here in this country are quite low when you look at secondary and tertiary markets. And I didn't have any credit when I came. I had literally $40,000 in my bank account. And I used that $40,000 to buy my first property in upstate New York in Syracuse. And that was just the start of really getting to the point where at that stage in early 2012, I'd gotten to the point where I was just I had the analysis paralysis. I'd been educating myself for about 2.5 years now, and I knew I needed to get in deep end. And lads, the thing was, like, I'd already moved this far. What's the next step of buying a property in upstate New York, right? I still remember getting on the Greyhound bus and getting up on a Saturday, 4 hours, 7 a.m. Greyhound bus. You get up there, I'd be able to look at a couple of properties and then get back on the bus and be back in New York City for a couple of years with the boys later that night. So that's the start of coming to the American story, and I'm sure we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you talk about, the fear of regret and not wanting to, wake up when you're 70 and realize you didn't do a few things. But on the flip side, there's also the fear of regret of doing the wrong thing. And to your point, a lot of times people get that analysis paralysis and they're just so concerned about making a wrong move that they never make a move. So how did you get past that? Because you said you did it for about 2.5 years. And I'd imagine there's like a diminishing returns of what you could learn online before you actually just went and did it. So how did you get past that fear?
Well, I guess it boils down to taking a bet, right? If you're going to take a bet on anyone, you might as well take a bet on yourself. And at the time, you don't know that. You don't think you don't give yourself the permission to think that you know what you need to do in order to go pull the trigger, right? And that's what analysis paralysis is. It's just this constant circle of self-gratification, going to these seminars, okay, where are you going to go put action in? Oh, I don't want to do it. I'm too scared. I'm gun shy. Because you're so worried about what's going to happen on the other side of that door, right? Your door's opening, walk through it. And so many people get so hung up on the negatives. Stop worrying about the negatives and just walk through the goddamn door.
Absolutely.
Because the thing is, you go back to the regret piece. Like my first deal it was my money. I was willing to lose it. And I could wholeheartedly say if something went wrong, and look, there was issues with that property. I had a drive-by shooting at that first house. Like it had its own can of worms. So, but you don't get to deal number 10 without doing deal number 1. And so many people think you've got to smack it out of the park on your first deal in order to be quote unquote successful. No, it's not even about that. It's about you getting it done and proving to yourself that you can get it done in order to deal number 2, and then also deal number 3, and so on and so on and so on. And it's a snowball effect. So again, goes back to betting on yourself and stop thinking about all the things that can go wrong and start thinking about the things that can go right. Because again, for me, it was, well, I'd already moved this far. Like the hard part was behind me. It was moving to the country, got the job, moved in with a girlfriend, Now I was like, well, come on, mate, you've already come this far. Learn to push your boundaries. Mm-hmm. And when you get comfortable pushing your boundaries on a consistent basis, you realize how big your boundaries can go, and getting comfortable being uncomfortable, as cliche as it is. So, yeah.
It's awesome.
I enjoy the fact that you lived in New York City and you came up into my neck of the woods, because I'm actually in upstate New York myself.
Oh, you are?
And I'm about an hour from Syracuse. So
got it. It was it was just something that I could afford, right? It wasn't anything crazy. And again, coming from Australia, where the Australian market is LA, New York, San Francisco, Miami, downtown expensive parts of Chicago. Like it is a high appreciation market, high demand, low supply, no cash flow. And all of a sudden you're seeing these properties for $38,000. I'm like, holy crap, how the hell, how do you even, like, what is this? Now there's a flip side to that I had a pretty good lesson in Section 8 housing and Class D properties, but it again goes back to that point of I got started. I got off the starting blocks, and that's the most important part. And look, I'm the first one to admit I've had my stumbles, and I'm going to continue to have stumbles in the future, but you got to be okay with the fact that you're going to have stumbles. It's not a smooth plane ride getting up to cruising altitude. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Absolutely. And do you still have that house, just out of curiosity?
No. That house was sold probably 18 months after, and we'll get into the story of how he started building brands and stuff like that, but needed that money to reinvest in the business.
Gotcha.
So,
yeah. Okay. Now that brings us to the next topic, your first business. What was the first business you started, and what did it look like?
It's the business I'm in today, which is real estate investing, right? Like the business is, and when I started originally, syndication, which is for those people who don't know what syndication is, it's the pooling of investors' money together to go out and buy larger assets that I can't afford on my own, right? And those larger assets are quote unquote safer from cash flow perspective. They have less risk because the bank views them as a business, not necessarily as you, the individual, and how you're going to service that mortgage. So really, I learned early on that people will only invest in my deals when they want to invest in me. Right. And so I'm in the business of myself, as selfish as it sounds, but it's read Goossens as the business, and everyone out there who's starting a business, and I don't care what industry you're in, being a thought leader and a key person of influence in your space is so important, because you'll attract better clients, you'll attract better partners, you'll attract better employees, and you'll ultimately attract better investors, because people will resonate with your story. And again, it goes back to, they invest in you first and foremost. They actually invest in the deal secondarily, because they want to trust you. They want to trust that you know what you're going to do with their money. You're going to trust that you know what you're doing, and that they can have that mano a mano sort of relationship with you in order to say, yeah, I'm going to go and invest with this person. So that's the business I'm in. It's morphed over the years, but it's ultimately the brass tacks is that it's people invest in me, into my deals, because they trust what I say and what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've said it on the show before that, we'd rather invest with a really, really skilled operator in a mediocre deal than a phenomenal deal in a poor operator, right? Because it's really easy. It's easy to screw those good deals up with bad operations. So
Correct.
Can you take us through, like, how did that business start? Like, what are some of the concerns that you had, some of the issues you had? I think a lot of people, to your point, they want to start a business, they whip up a logo, and maybe they have somebody do a website on Fiverr, and then all of a sudden they got their business, but they got no plan. They don't know where they're going. And so how did that?
Well, so you talk about the sort of the aha moments in my life. And the first one was picking up the book of Rich Dad Poor Dad. The second one was having a conversation with my buddy in New York City, 2013, over a beer. I've got two places in upstate New York and Syracuse. I'm looking at a flip in Philly. I'm boasting to him like, hey man, I'm doing this great stuff. I'm crushing it. Still got my W-2 job. And he's like, man, that's awesome. And I just closed on a 70 unit deal in British Columbia in Canada. And I said, 70, like 70? How the hell did you do that? He talked to me about other people's money. He talked to me about seller carryback finance. He talked to me about a mentor. And all these things I'd known in my head. And the mentor piece was a really important piece that at that point, when I made that decision to go start investing, I could have gone two ways. I could have gone and got a mentor and just kept spending money on education, or I could go and get an education by doing it. But I knew that I was getting to the end of my tether on what I could borrow and my maybe my mindset a little bit. That's when I came to sell those first couple of deals in order to reinvest it in myself and go get that mentor so I can surround myself with people that I aspire to be. And this is a mate of mine who I've known for many, many years. And so for me to see him say that to me, I was like, well, excuse me, if Scott can do it, then why can't I?
Yeah.
So it was more of the fact of but people that are already held at high esteem doing cool stuff. Well, I want to be as cool as them. So that's the surrounding yourself with people. And that's the example I give when people say, well, surround yourself with the people, the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Well, that's the story that I tell because it literally hit me in the face. It's like, he's telling me everything I know, like all that I've learnt. I need a mentor, need to scale, need sell a chiropractic finance, need to create a business, and okay, I need to go just take action. And so from there, it was more to do with, okay, how am I going to go pay for this mentor? And the ability at that point to say, I'm going to invest in myself by getting a mentor. Again, goes back to the betting on yourself. I bet on myself coming to the United States not just because I wanted to live here. I bet on myself by getting going and off the couch and getting on a bus to Syracuse every weekend for 4 months before I got comfortable with doing something. Again, betting on yourself to say, hey, I'm worth it. I know that I can be better, but I need a coach. I'm watching the Michael Jordan documentary right now. He's a freak, but he had coaches. And they were able to guide him along his path, along his trajectory. Now, I'm not as good as Michael Jordan, nowhere near it, but it's the same analogy that we all need coaches in life. And because we aren't just born with skill sets in our mind that we can go out and execute, left, right, and center. We need people in our corner to help us, guide us along the way, to be a sounding board and to look over our shoulder to make sure we know that we're doing the right thing. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Now, the gentleman that gave you your Matrix moment, did you ever invest with him in some of his deals?
No, he actually tells me today that he wants to invest with me because I've scaled quite quickly. He's still got his job in Canada and just different mindset. I'm one of those people that like, oh, you do that? Okay, I'm gonna go like I'm sprinting over here doing exactly. Like, I want to go do it 10 times what you're doing. Like, nice. So he's got a handful of deals that he's loving life and. I would love to do something with him, but I'm just not in the Canadian market and he's not in the US market. So it's a little bit different. Yeah.
That's awesome. So so getting a mentor and getting that coach in your corner early on is obviously pretty key in your perspective. What's your stance on paying for mentorship? So I know people nowadays, they expect everything free on the internet. And my stance is, people pay $50,000 a year for a college degree that's got no guarantee, but they they run for the hills if somebody's trying to, charge $1,000 for a course that is really tangible, that could really give them some skills that it can make them money. So what's your stance on that?
I originally was really anti it. Like I was really to your point in my early careers in 2011, 2012, even being pitched in Australia before coming to the United States, the $7,000 mentorship class or whatever it is, like, why am I paying you $7,000? And so for me, learning that the $7,000 isn't, it's obviously they're making money. So it's a barrier that they can weed out the tire kickers. But also on the other side, again, it's that mental ability to say, I'm really willing to write myself a check for $7,000 and invest in myself. That's an investment. And when you get over that mindset or get over that hurdle and know that it's going to be beneficial for you, then the money is sort of, that goes away. It's like, okay, I'll pay $7,000, I'll pay $10,000, I'll pay 20. Like now there's obviously comes a point where you're just throwing money away or pissing money against the wall. But at a crucial time where and you have to be very selective with your mentors. And I was very prudent and frugal because I didn't want to go spend $30,000. I only spent $2,500, but it was enough to kickstart that career. And here's the other thing, I have different mentors today. I have different, and they will evolve over time as I grow as a leader, as a human, as a husband, as a brother, as a son. I will continue to need different mentors in my life as I continue to flap my wings. It just depends on what stage of the business you're at. So in the beginning, it was just like I needed someone to be a sounding board. Today, I have someone else who helps me more with the subconscious and mental aspect because I've got the sort of the constants, the mechanics of the business down pat. Now it's all about, well, how do I steer this ship for the next 20 years, and where's my legacy going to be? That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah.
It's awesome.
My question is, I want to kind of unpack a little bit about what you said. You got the mentor, you decided you wanted to start investing in larger multifamily real estate. When your first deal, going from the duplexes and triplexes that you had in Syracuse into the larger multifamily, how did you invest? Did you invest passively? Were you a GP? What did that look like?
Yeah. So the first deal was I actually made the move to LA, which is where I'm now. My wife is from LA. Got a job working as a structural engineer. And I knew I needed to start a meetup group because I knew if I was the source of good conversations with people meeting mano a mano together and having that, space and that platform, that people would then look at me with more respect, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And through those, I just had, I think once a month I had some sort of like happy hour, using the model in the RIAs, but not really, it wasn't a RIA chapter. It was just like, I'm just going to put on a networking event and see who rocks up. And through that, I met someone who was actively working as an asset manager for a multifamily company in LA, but he was also trying to do deals on the side. And he was underwriting a bunch of deals. He taught me a little bit about to sharpen my underwriting skills. And through that, we became mates. And he actually got a deal under contract in early 2014 when I just started this sort of meetup event. And it was a 7 cap in Houston, Texas on a 2000 build, which is crazy good. And the numbers were good. I knew the numbers were good. And he's like, but I can't raise any money. And he's like, you know how to raise money? He's like, well, I've got this mentor. Apparently he can, and and so what initially my mentor was like, no, I don't want to raise. Like he'd only done one deal himself actually at that point. So it took a little bit of persuasion for him to say, hey, you need to look at this deal again. This guy is freaking smart. He's a genius. And I think you guys need to, you need to somehow figure it out, because all I know is it's a good deal. I paid you a bunch of money to tell me that you can raise money. Let's go make this happen. And I really was just the glue to bring them together with the introduction. And through that, they have now gone off to create a 10,000 unit company. And they're called Ashcroft Capital in New York City. And I was there right at the beginning on the first deal. So I took a little slice of the GP back then. And back then you did whatever it took to get the deal done. It was throwing spaghetti against the wall and see what stuck. Yeah.
So you went from, sorry, go ahead there.
No, anything you can do to get in the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So you went from a triplex to 176 unit, you said?
250.
250. How did you do that? Like, what was the mindset? What was
well, again, it was
scaling.
It was meeting the right people. It was starting the meetup event to meet this gentleman who we had a coffee, and he started talking to me and showing me deals, and we started underwriting deals together. And he had access to brokers because his company that he was working for was already in Texas doing deals, student housing deals. And so they were never looking at classic multifamily. So he had these relationships with brokers. He had deal flow that I didn't have. And so without starting that meetup event, I wouldn't have met him. We wouldn't have never have had that conversation. That it's about putting yourself out there, and it's a little bit of kismet, universe, whatever woo-woo stuff you want to talk about. But the fact is it happened. And again, the door opened and you just walked through it. There was never not going to be a time where we weren't going to close on that deal. Now, again, I only raised a very small portion of money from that first deal. It was a cold shower in telling me how I should start my business. The gentleman, my mentor, eventually raised a lot of money. They got the deal done, but I only raised a very, very small piece. And it's funny when you're starting down, and I already started the podcast, or it started to develop my brand at that stage, and you talk about websites and all that sort of stuff. But you realize how unknown you are and how uneducated your base is because of the lack of information you've given them, because it's your responsibility as a business owner to educate your customers on what you do. And thus it was just like, I remember approaching like 50 different people, and I thought, I'm going to easily raise $500,000 to $1 million here. I've got this in the barn. And I ended up having 2 people that invested, and they invested, I think it was between them $100,000. And it was just a cold shower of, I need to scale the message. I need to scale my reach. And I need to, in order to reach more ears, in order to reach more people, so they can invest with me. And it was my responsibility to do that. And so you ask in the green room before we press record, like, how do people scale businesses? Well, it comes down to what's your platform, how's your pitch, and what's your marketing paraphernalia in order to educate the people that you're pitching to about what you do. If your message is mumbled, if your marketing stuff is bad, then they're not going to understand. And when you approach them with a deal, a live deal, they're not ready. They haven't had enough time to get to know you and get comfortable with you. So that's where the podcast came from. That's where the meetups come from. And that's where it's doing those little things consistently over a long period of time. You build that trust. And with trust, again, goes back to my statement I said before. People invest in the person first and foremost. They don't actually invest in the deal, regardless of how good the deal is. And that's a little bit with my mentor. When I asked him the first time, he's like, oh, I don't know. Like, he hasn't done any deals before. Like, you know, like it was the Kraken deal with a mediocre operator because he was the first operator, you know. But now look where they are. They're 10,000 units. They've been KPs on my deals, my personal big deals that I've gone on to grow my own capital, my company at Wildhorn Capital. So, again, we did everything we could to get the deal done and got done. I was a small cog in that piece, but I was also the glue to help bring people together. And that's this, again, it's a snowball effect. You start doing things over and over again. And without doing that meetup event in downtown Los Angeles, I would have never met the bloke, and I don't know where I would have been today. You know, like, there's just certain times in life where you look back and go, imagine that turned out differently, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. So basically getting out there and thinking creatively and just not missing out on opportunities when they present themselves is a big part of success.
Well, yeah, but it's also putting yourself out there, right? Like me starting my networking about my podcast, my brand, like, I was nervous as hell. Like, don't get me wrong. I wasn't like this confident guy, you know, this is polish. This is years of doing this and I sound articulate because I've done it. But when I started, it was mumbling and it was not concerned that no one would rock up, but knowing that it's about the little steps, right? It's doing it consistently over a long period of time that you start to see results. People think too much about, well, I did it once and it didn't work and I quit. You know, I get on the treadmill once and I didn't lose my 30 pounds. I quit. You know, like it's about going consistently. It's about getting on that Greyhound bus and going up to Syracuse over a period of 6 months before I was comfortable with it, pulling the trigger. Mm-hmm. So all these little stories are about the consistency of doing something over and over again to get comfortable to then know so that when that door opens, you're not so worried about what's on the other side of it because you've done enough work and you're comfortable. You're going to walk through that door when the opportunity presents itself. So
yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that I've seen over the last couple of weeks that really stuck with me is, I can't remember where I saw it either, so I can't give credit. But the only way you fail in real estate is if you quit, right? So to your point, if you continue with it and you're willing to kind of continue to take those lumps and learn from them, then that consistency is going to be key. So
100%.
Can you talk about, Wildhorn Capital and what you guys are doing now and how you went from, that to where you guys are at currently, some of the, systems that you had to put in place and some of the challenges that you had with scaling that?
Yeah. So I always knew that, so when my mentor and this gentleman went off and started creating more, I did a few more deals with them as they started to get more confidence, and I started to be able to build my little brand around bringing investors to their deals. Through that, I was able, but I always knew that I wanted to be my own operator. I didn't want to play sort of second fiddle, so to speak. So, but I made a key decision in 2014 as a structural engineer, knowing that I was probably going to be in the corporate world for a few more years because I didn't have enough side hustle income, and I needed a job to stay in this country because I needed a visa, right? I hadn't married my wife at this stage. So I knew that I had a skill set, and I approached working for a small engineering joint in downtown Los Angeles. I actually approached all the developers we were hired by to do their structural engineering drawings and said, hey, I'm a project manager. I've got this skill set. I'm so over engineering. I want to be in the business of real estate development. Like, that's what I aspire to be. Do you have any openings? And I emailed about 10 different companies, and one of them got back and said, hey, actually, my wife's originally from Australia. Love your story and would love to meet. And through that, they created me a job, and I was a project manager / owner's rep on the build of about 500 high-end luxury units in downtown Long Beach over a period of about 4.5 years. And really, I was doing real estate on the side with my structural engineering job. Now I was doing it 24/7. I was in my day job. I was getting paid to do it. I was seeing behind the curtain how a big shop does it. and I was doing my stuff on the side. Now, I kept the stuff on the side secret for a little while. I remember taking, phone calls from the bathroom, and it got to a point where I eventually did quit, but we left on good terms. But the thing you ask about systems, and one of the systems I realized early on that I'm quite handy with a spreadsheet. I'm quite handy with being an engineer. I'm very mathematically orientated. That I couldn't underwrite enough deals in a week because I had my full-time job. I had my girlfriend trying to, relationships, trying to keep fit and healthy and all that sort of stuff. And it just felt like so many spinning plates. So I was like realizing I was the bottleneck. And okay, well, how do I replace myself a little bit? Well, maybe I can spend $15 an hour and get a couple of, undergrads from USC. And that's exactly what I did. I went to USC. I posted on the website of the real estate school website. I got 2 undergrads for $15 an hour, and I walked them through my process, my systems. They got a bit of side money, and they were able to underwrite 2 or 3 deals a week. And that was the first system I implemented. And this is prior to starting Whitehall Capital. And I started looking at deals, and I could get that volume up, right? It was all about the volume because you needed to go through 50 deals to find the one. And I was making offers on these 50 units or 70 unit deals in Dallas, Texas, actually. And I was getting very close. I was getting invited to best and finals because my numbers were good. So clearly that was working. But what wasn't working was the fact that when I got on these best and finals calls with these sellers, I opened my mouth and I'm Australian, I'm living in LA, and who the hell is this guy? I didn't have that broker relationship on the ground. And that was my shortcoming. I didn't have that superpower, right? And so that is when, through meeting a few people, through being, just starting to build that brand a little bit more, where the podcast was starting to go, I was introduced to a gentleman who's now my business partner, Andrew Campbell, and he was local he was looking at the same deals I was looking at. We're probably probably offering on the same deals, but we had complementary skill sets. He's not very deep, it's not this is a slight at him. He's just not detailed orientated like I am. He's not a numbers guy, but he had a different skill set, which was, he could go shake the tree and see what lemons fell off. And I'll determine if we're making lemonade or lemon juice, right? And so we very much had a complementary skill set. And that was the next time we scaled. So scaled with the getting out of my own way with the underwriting. Scaled by then realizing I needed a good business partner. I needed someone who could take some of the responsibilities off my load, off my plate, and share it around, right? And that's what we've done to this date. And now we've scaled. We now own 2,000 units between San Antonio and Austin, and we're looking to double the portfolio in the next 2 to 3 years. So it's been a hell of a ride. And I tell you what, I didn't move to this country thinking I'd do this. So it's been an incredible 10 years. I've been here 8 years, and I just know that, back to the story of walking through those doors, the next 10 years is going to be even freaking better. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's fantastic, man. Yeah, I want to highlight 2 things real quick on that, because they say success leaves clues, and common themes that we're pulling out of all these guests that we're having on the show. You said a lot of the same thing that I've heard a couple of times, which is, you did something which has got a job in the industry, right? You got a job that made you a better investor. Basically, it's a lot easier to do that way versus just trying to continue to shift your mindset from work to investor, trying to do it on the side. So that's huge. And then your undergrads you hired, would you have been able to do that if you didn't have solid systems? I feel like a lot of people want to try to hire, but then they get somebody to hire and they don't know what to do. They fail miserably.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point, right? It was not a cold shower. It was a good understanding. And I had hired a virtual assistant at the same time, actually, in the Philippines. And very quickly I realized he was failing and they were failing, the undergrads, because of my lack of communication to them. And it was a self-awareness that I needed to know that it ain't their problem. It's my problem because I'm not describing it. They're not in my head. So I spent a lot more time when I delegate a task to really, I started with just long emails, right? Step 1 and doing screenshots and all this sort of stuff. Now I do Loom, which is a video recording of me speaking and sharing my screen. And there ain't any issues these days. And you get better as you go. But the thing is, I needed to start, right? And teaching them and how I would empowering them to make decisions. And then with the underwriters, I also taught them okay, I want you to present to me. What do you like about this deal? Why do you like this deal? Why do you think this deal sucks? Tell me, right? And once a week, they got used to doing that. It doesn't happen overnight. It's the training sort of mentality. But then I realized I was starting to build these little systems, and those guys fell out and they went to different things. And I've had through my system, at least 20 different underwriters over the years, all 1099s, because they do side hustles when they're young, and then they get promoted and they get too much. Okay, fine, I'll go find another person. And I've now got a system down pat where I've got 7 half-an-hour video tutorials of how to use my underwriting process, including a PDF explanation.
Nice.
And of course, there's going to be some back and forth in the beginning, but it doesn't. Now, when I onboarded an underwriter, it's within 2 weeks, within pretty much 2 conversations, they understand what I want, and they go from there. So yeah,
it's awesome. Very cool.
We just actually had this talk today about the complementary skill set, because Mike's more detail oriented and I'm the shaking the tree guy. And that's great that you use the synergy together with that. I want to talk a little bit about your branding and how important branding was for your syndication career and also for raising capital. Have you gotten to the point now where I've heard that once you get branded so well in the market that the money just appears for you? Is that something that you've achieved?
Yeah, well, look, you're always raising capital, right? You always be, the ABC, always be closing, but it'll always be raising. It should be ABRC, always be raising capital. Yes, so it goes back to that personal brand. I started with an RSN brand, which was the letters of me and my 2 sisters, Reed, Sophie, Nell, and no one understood. Who's RSN Property Group? No one, and it changed to Wildhorn. And at the end of the day, when you think about all the great influencers in the world, Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, you don't know what Tony Robbins LLC is, right? You just know Tony Robbins because it's him. He's the guy, right? Tim Ferriss, same sort of thing. So really stepping out from behind a logo and saying it's Reed Goossens is the brand and the personal brand. And that is how people get to know your story. And through knowing your story, they build that trust. And I said a few things. You mentioned it before that people just come to you. Well, it goes back to starting a podcast. What's the platform that you're using to get your voice out there so people can hear what you have to say? Because and the other thing, when you are building a business and a brand, and this is regardless of what industry you're in, you could have a widget, you could be in real estate, you could be building a service-based company. Everyone is standing on some element of standing on a mountain of value. They just got to understand that story and tell that value to the people in order for them to resonate. And that goes all through from mission statements to values to your core beliefs. And that is an element of marketing in itself, because people know what I stand for. I'm not going to attract everyone, and I don't need to attract everyone. People might say, "Get bent, Reed. I don't like what you have to say." That's perfect. I don't need to work with you. But I have other people who are raving fans, and that's who we work with together with, right? And my motto is like, I want to be able to have a beer with someone, and I can know pretty quickly if we're going to have a beer. That's just the way business is done, right? And people get to resonate with you through you telling your story, through you sharing your experiences. And my story of coming to America story was interesting. That's a good start to a pitch. And pitching in itself isn't pitching. It's just starting a conversation. No one walks away from a pitch going, "God, that was a good pitch." They walk away going, "That was a good conversation," right? And that through there, that is the brand. That is the down to earth. And it takes years. It takes a long time to build it, and it can be all over in a second if you do something wrong or you stuff up. And that's why being transparent, down to earth, approachable, level-headed, not having your head up in the cloud, not having an ego. Try not to have an ego. All those things matter when building a brand and building a business. So, yeah.
It's awesome.
Great.
Go ahead. Reed, I got one more question for you, sir.
Sure.
You talked about where you want to take your company in the next handful of years. What do you see as the biggest roadblock, or the biggest obstacle you got to tap on? How do you plan on doing that?
I think the biggest roadblock, there isn't really a roadblock. It's more, again, now that I'm at a different stage in my career, like we're going to start bringing on full-time employees. We've got a full-time executive assistant. We still outsource property management and construction. I do the asset management 100% of all our properties, and my business partner still does all the deal finding. We're bringing on another partner. We're going to bring on full-time underwriting. We probably will become vertically integrated at some point, where we bring property management in-house and get rid of the construction, which is in my background, bring that in-house as well and stop paying a third party. So really it's just about trying to find the time and the space to do it. But it also comes down to revenue, right? What is the recurring revenue in your business in order to go afford that $100,000 asset manager that can, take the load off me And so I can then have the clarity to go and build something, another revenue stream within the business. And again, same issues like I had back with those undergrads, right? It's the same thing. Now I'm just a different scale. I've now got to scale to 2,000. In order to get to 4,000, I need to free up my time in order to go build some more systems in the business to support it over the next 20 years of growth. So I know what to do. It's just about going off and executing and doing it now. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Great. Reed, we wanted to see if you could let the listeners know where they can find out more about you and where they can get in contact with you.
Sure. Yeah. The easiest way is just jump onto reedgoossens.com. That's REEDGOOSSENS.com. There's a podcast there. There's books, audio books, it's all there, the blog. And if you ever are coming through LA and you want to grab a beer or grab a coffee, you can hit me up at info, that's INFO at reedgoossens.com. Just send me an email and give me a bit of a heads up notice when you're coming through and we can try and make it happen.
That's awesome. Very cool, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on and telling your story and dropping the knowledge that you just did on with our listeners and letting them learn from what you did and some of the things that you did. So really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, hey lads, you're doing a great job. Keep it up, and I'm really honored to be partaking in the show. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Reed. All right, Mr. Fierro, Reed Goossens.
Dude, that guy's awesome. I can't
how about that, man?
Oh, man. And, he's just came in and dropped his knowledge, dropped the mic and left. We're sitting there with this dumbfounded look on our face.
Wow. And man, you hear about these stories all the time, and basically the example of if he can do it, come into America from Australia with not a ton of resources, he can scale to what he has, and then what excuse do we have? So it's a really good example to see. And man, yeah, what a good dude, what a great thing that he's built over there at Wildhorn Capital, and the knowledge that he's putting out is awesome.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Yeah, he's doing a great job. So, and he invited us out to the coast for a beer, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Now we just got to get out there.
So what are we going to do for a call to action tonight? Or today?
Well, man, we talked about the RIA and the warm up, and we touched on it with Mr. Goossens himself. So I think that's what we're gonna wrap it up with, a nice little bow, and say, if you haven't yet, get connected with your local RIA. It's super easy. Let me tell you how you do it. Go to Google, type in RIA in your local town, and boom, there you go. You got some results. You'll likely have a calendar that you'll be able to look up different events and different subjects. Let me tell you right now, I'll go to my RIA and I'll tell you what we got and show you how easy this is. Yeah, Minnesota Real Estate Investor Association, calendar of events, just like that. We got some free events, and look at this, Wholesaling 101. We got that on the 5th. How to grow your wealth with apartment buildings investing, got that on the 8th. So look at all these events that you can sign up for. Most of them digital now, but it's to be expected in our day and age. Some of them are free. Some of them cost, what's this one? $10 to get out the door. Yep. And they got speakers and they got all sorts of cool things. So get connected with your local RIA, get educated, get networking, and get growing your business. That's it, man. Jump out there and put yourself out there and see what you got, what other people are doing, and learn what you can and jump into the business. Heck yeah, man. I love it. Cool. Well, that's everything I've got for the folks today. What do you think? Same, man. Ready to get out of here. So thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Real Estate Marathon Podcast. See you next time. Have a great one.
Thanks for listening to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast. If you found value in any of the content from this show, consider supporting us in the following ways. Subscribe to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast. Leave a rating and review. Continue the conversation with like-minded individuals on social media by heading over to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast Facebook group, or follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Real Estate Marathon Podcast.